Today is Thursday, February 2nd. What to know about the Fed's latest move to get inflation under control. Another one of President Biden's homes being searched by the FBI. An outrage over a high school AP course being offered around the country. Plus, the latest study about toddlers and screen time. The new tech Samsung unveiled, from phones to laptops to virtual reality. And the legendary quarterback who decided to retire for the second time in 2 years. Those stories and more coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. The Federal Reserve is slowing its interest rate hikes, but they are still going up. This time around, the central bank raised its key interest rate by 1/4 point. That's the smallest increase since March of last year, when the Fed first started its aggressive campaign to tame inflation. There have now been a total of 8 rate hikes, so the range has gone from near 0 to 4.5 to 4.75, meaning it costs Americans more to borrow money now than it has at any time since 2007. As you know, that makes it more pricey to take out a mortgage, an auto or business loan, or new credit card debt. And the Fed hopes by doing this, people and businesses will start borrowing and spending less, so the economy will cool down and prices will stop going up. There have been signs of inflation slowing, but the Fed chairman says he needs to see more evidence of inflation being on a, quote, sustained downward path. He said expect a couple more rate hikes and no rate cuts until at least next year. The FBI finished a third search of President Biden's things on the hunt for more secret government records. This time, agents searched the Biden's vacation home. They did not turn up any more classified documents, but they did take some handwritten notes and other things relating to Biden's time as vice president. Remember, when they searched his Delaware home last month, they did find classified docs. News outlets say investigators also searched his former office at a Washington think tank in November, but it's not clear if they took anything that time. Before the formal searches, it was just members of Biden's team voluntarily handing records over. Biden's lawyers say all the searches have happened with the president's blessing, so the FBI did not need warrants. Still, any search of a president's property is pretty unusual. Investigators are still working to figure out exactly how any classified documents wound up where they shouldn't have been. A separate investigation is looking into the same thing with documents found at former President Trump's home. So far, no new comments from the Justice Department about what they've learned so far. This week, the ATF put out the most expansive federal report on guns and crime in more than 2 decades. It says in 2021, more than half of the guns police found at crime scenes had been bought within 3 years. And that's a much quicker turnaround than in the past. But most guns used in crimes were not actually used by the people who bought them. As the AP notes, this could mean we're seeing an increase in illegal gun trafficking, or what's known as a straw purchase. That's when someone who can legally buy a gun gets one to sell to someone who can't. The report also documented a rise in devices that convert legal semi-automatic weapons into illegal, fully automatic ones, as well as so-called ghost guns that are made at home and can't be traced with serial numbers. The ATF says it hopes this report can help police and policymakers take action to reduce gun violence. Thousands of people showed up to say goodbye to a 29-year-old black man who was killed in a violent traffic stop in Memphis. Tyree Nichols' funeral was yesterday. And during the service, Nichols' mother called on Congress to pass police reform. So did the Reverend Al Sharpton and Vice President Kamala Harris. They specifically talked about the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act that includes a national registry for officers who have been disciplined for misconduct, a national ban on no-knock warrants, and more. It's been tied up in Congress as lawmakers debate the part of the bill that has to do with making it easier to bring civil lawsuits against individual officers for wrongdoing. Sharpton and Harris were just 2 of several public figures who went to the funeral, along with the families of other black people who died because of police violence. By now, people all around the world have seen video of officers holding Nichols down and up as they repeatedly punched, kicked, and struck him with a baton. He died from his injuries in the hospital. But some of his friends are hoping another video goes viral instead. They're now circulating a recording of him skateboarding when he was a teenager, saying that's how they want him to be remembered. Nichols' mother is also raising money to build a skate park in his honor. As for the officers who have been fired and charged with his murder, a couple of their lawyers say they plan to plead not guilty, as they did not mean for Nichols to die. They're expected to be in court in a couple of weeks. People in the south central U.S. and Central Plains are now dealing with the 4th day of an epic winter storm. This morning, Texans and hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses are without power in the brutal cold. Yesterday, parts of Texas were even colder than Alaska. Thousands of airline passengers have become stranded, and wrecks have piled up across many major slick roads. Several schools in Texas, Arkansas, and Tennessee have canceled classes again today. A warm front is heading from the Gulf Coast, which could melt a lot of the ice. But it could also cause some trouble of its own, with heavy showers and even some flooding for the deep south and southeast. Meanwhile, intense Arctic air will target the northeast. Temperatures in parts of New England could drop by 40 to 50 degrees before tomorrow night, but they are expected to bounce back by the end of the weekend. By the way, if you're curious about the long-term winter weather forecast, you could check with a local meteorologist or a groundhog. Yep, once again, on this Groundhog Day, Americans will look to Punxsutawney Phil to see if we're going to get an early spring or 6 more weeks of winter. It all depends on whether the nation's most famous groundhog sees his shadow. But maybe don't make any serious plans based on what he says. The federal agency NOAA says Punxsutawney Phil is only right about 40% of the time. All right, we have more news still coming up, but first, thanks to our sponsor, Rothy's. In the new year, my husband and I decided we wanted to try to simplify a bit more. Stop saying yes to too many things and get rid of any extra clutter or other stuff we don't really need or wear. And as part of that, I finally got around to organizing my closet again and donating some of the clothes that never leave the hanger. Well, even as I refresh my closet and wardrobe, my Rothy's shoes continue to deserve their spot front and center. They continue to be chic and comfortable and trendy yet timeless. And as I need new shoes that are pretty much any style, Rothy's is one of my go-to places to get them. They have tons of options for new wardrobe staples that you can feel good about wearing, since they're not only 100% machine washable, but they're also sustainably made. Their signature thread is spun from recycled single-use plastic water bottles. So for stylish and comfortable shoes, shop Rothy's and get $20 off your first purchase at rothys.com/newsworthy. For the first time, a long-term study is linking screen time for young kids to behavioral problems later on. An international team of researchers followed 400 little ones from the time they were 1 to the time they were 9. Scientists analyzed the children's brains and collected information through neuropsych testing, as well as patient and teacher questionnaires. What they found was the babies who looked at screens the most, like for an average of 2 hours a day, did the worst on executive functions testing by the time they were 9. Scientists say executive functions are the mental processes that let us plan, focus our attention, remember instruction, and multitask. And they say those skills are important for emotional regulation, learning, academic achievement, and mental health. This new research supports what the American Academy of Pediatrics has been recommending for a while now: no screen time before 18 months old unless it's video chatting. Still, researchers say even this new study doesn't really prove that screen time directly causes those executive function problems, that maybe there's something else in the child's environment that could make them predisposed to the issues, as well as more screen time. So they say more research is needed. There's now a new curriculum for an African American Studies course that's been getting a lot of pushback lately. It's an advanced placement, or AP class, that high schoolers can take for college credit. A couple of weeks ago, Florida banned the course because officials like Governor Ron DeSantis said it advanced a political agenda and broke a state law that regulates how race is taught in public schools. That move got its own backlash. More than 200 professors from colleges nationwide condemned the governor's action. Then just yesterday, the nonprofit that puts the African American AP Studies course together, College Board, came out with its new curriculum. It removed works from several authors and made certain topics optional, like Black Lives Matter, Black queer studies, and reparations for slavery. Plus, it added optional subjects like Black conservatism. Despite the timing, College Board says it did not make these changes to appease Florida lawmakers, but that they have been in the works for a while. It's not clear yet if it will meet Florida standards, though. The state's education department says it's reviewing it now to see if it will be offered in high schools there after all. Stay tuned. Samsung just unveiled its newest product line, and its latest Galaxy smartphones were stars of the show. They apparently have more storage than the last models, a more powerful battery, and one of the highest megapixel cameras available on any phone. Samsung also showed off 4 different laptops for different purposes, like one that's supposed to be so high-powered you could use it for gaming, video editing, and 3D design software, or another that works as a regular laptop, touchscreen, or with a pen. The new Galaxy smartphones and laptops come out on the 17th. Samsung also said it's working on some new mixed reality experiences. It didn't go into a lot of the specifics, just that the company is working with Google and Qualcomm on products that, quote, blur the lines between our physical and digital worlds. Well, here's a good story for Groundhog Day. Iconic quarterback Tom Brady is retiring from the NFL. And yes, you've heard this before. It was just 1 year ago he made the same announcement, only to change his mind a few weeks later. But this time he says it's for good. With that, the tributes started coming in. His longtime coach, Bill Belichick, said Brady was the ultimate winner. Other legendary athletes also honored Brady on social media, like Olympian Michael Phelps, tennis great Serena Williams, and soccer star David Beckham. Brady is widely considered the greatest NFL quarterback ever. He won 6 Super Bowls with the New England Patriots and 1 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was named MVP 3 times and holds the records for most career wins, most career passing touchdowns, most career passing yards, and many more. Right away, Brady can start work as an analyst for Fox Sports, which signed him to a 10-year, $375 million contract last summer. Well, that's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Thing to Know Thursday. But first, a word from our sponsor, Stitch Fix. Sometimes, even when I want some new clothes or accessories, I feel like I just don't have the time or don't feel like I'm updated on all the latest styles enough to find the right things to buy. And since every brand fits differently, it's a pain to figure out what size to buy. Those are just a few reasons I appreciate Stitch Fix. It's the best way to discover new styles and brands just for you because it's personalized. Your stylist learns about your tastes and size and price preferences, and then helps you find the looks that you'll love. I've gotten such great items and even full outfits from my shirt to my shoes that I would not have found on my own. And don't worry about getting a subscription that you'll forget about. With Stitch Fix, there's no subscription required, although you can sign up for seasonal fixes if you love it and want to, but you are in control. And right now, Stitch Fix is offering the Newsworthy listeners $20 off their first fix at stitchfix.com/newsworthy. That's stitchfix.com/newsworthy for $20 off today. stitchfix.com/newsworthy. Okay, now back to Thing to Know Thursday. This week marks the start of Black History Month. Every year, the U.S. and Canada spend the month of February honoring the achievements of Black people, celebrating Black culture, and reflecting on the struggle for racial justice. February was chosen because the second week of the month coincides with the birthdays of both Abraham Lincoln, who was influential in the emancipation of slaves, and Frederick Douglass, who was a former slave and prominent leader in the abolitionist movement. Every year, schools and businesses offer Black history-themed meals, lectures, plays, and more. Major brands also roll out clothing, TV specials, and other content. Of course, these things can sometimes be problematic, especially when they're presented without context. So the NAACP says a better way to mark Black History Month is to do things like support Black-owned businesses and creators, donate to a Black organization, or visit a Black history or civil rights museum. There are dozens of virtual events happening as well. We'll add some links in today's episode notes. All right, thank you so much for joining us today and listening. We'll catch you up on more news tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.